I welcome you all to yet another evening talk with a very interesting topic, developing employees to entrepreneurs, emerging reality. As I just mentioned, that this is a special series which we have started, that in this series, every Friday evening, we're going to have a speaker from the members of ICT Delhi chapter or our diploma students. Okay, so we are giving them an opportunity to, interact with the other members. Okay, so now every Friday evening, you can, look forward to interesting evening talk. So I would like to invite now Mr. Mukesh Jain, our chapter chairperson, to say a few words.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen and my fellow members. Thank you very much, Rakesh Bhai, for accepting our invitation to deliver this, be a eminent speaker to this evening. We welcome you, sir, here, and I welcome Sonali ji, who's from Turkey. We welcome you, madam, here. And we welcome all our seniors and all fellow ISTDians and members of other organizations to this evening. Today's topic is developing employees to intrapreneurs, emerging reality. The topic is very relevant, seeing the, present circumstances and COVID time. So I'm sure with Rakesh Bhai, you will learn a lot of new things and a lot of new ideas he will give to you. So you will take a lot of good things to home. So I welcome you all once again and request Pratima ji to carry on.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. So friends, I now request Mrs. Sucharita to introduce our eminent speaker, Mr. Rakesh Seth. So Sucharita, would you like to introduce? Is she there?
We can see them. We can see her, ma'am, but her mic is off.
Sucharita, please unmute yourself. Hello, can you unmute her?
Yeah. Thank you, Pritima. Mr. Rakesh Seth, an eminent HR personality. He is
Just
Rakesh
a second, Alok ji, please record this. You are not recording.
Sir, it's already under record, sir.
Recording.
Acha, you are recording it?
Yeah.
Rakesh Seth is the chief HR mentor.
Repeat it from beginning.
Okay. It is a great privilege to introduce today's eminent speaker, Mr. Rakesh Seth. Rakesh Seth is a chief HR mentor, author, speaker, and visiting faculty. He operates in the domain of HR, business strategy, strategic HR, leadership, and management development. He has over 30 years of diverse and well-blended senior, managerial, and academic experience. He worked with many large and well-known business houses, Tata, Thappers, Anands, Sriram, Honda Eternit, Everest, ACC, LNJB, and Lloyd's in CHRO roles. He is author of 3 books. He has designed, developed, and delivered many HR boot camps and management development programs for managers of private and public sector organizations in India and overseas. He has been a visiting faculty to many B schools in India. He is an alumnus of FMS, University of Delhi, and holds Business Leaders Program from IIM Calcutta. And we look forward to your insightful session, sir. We welcome you.
Okay. So Rakesh, it's all yours now.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much and good evening to everyone. At the outset, I would like to convey my thanks to ISTD Delhi chapter and especially our chairman, Mr. Mukesh Jain, for inviting me to share my thoughts on the subject of employees to entrepreneur emerging reality. You see, objective of really designing this program has been that of late we find that a lot of people are exiting from the corporates, because of their no fault. And I find that those guys who are exiting are really educated ones. They are engineers, they are MBAs, and all of a sudden you find that the promoter who's may not be that educated declares that I have so many surplus people. So these guys have nowhere to go. So, that has prompted me to really design such a program where, we can really create a new mindset in the minds of the employees that, they are not employees, they are the entrepreneurs. Now, if they find that the company is not doing well, they must pitch in and, should offer themselves as to what they can contribute so that if the organization is not doing well, they can really take it to the next level by designing, redesigning, rethinking, and also creatively and innovatively creating new products for the organization so that they can save their jobs. Because I find saving job is one of the key element in the business today. And a business can save jobs only if everyone thinks like the entrepreneur, and everyone thinks like a promoter. Everyone thinks that he is being paid out of the operations earnings of the organizations, that they are not being paid from the pocket of the promoters. So the whole idea is that has prompted me to really create and design this talk. This primarily revolves around the what's happening in the environment, what's going on, and how should we develop employees into the entrepreneurs? So therefore, what are the areas we must expose them to so that they are ready to take on the challenge which the uncertainties are throwing today. And then this talk also talks about the how do we encourage entrepreneurship in the organizations. That's more of a game of, in my view, encouraging the entrepreneurship. And then I will briefly talk about the experimental mindsets, because unless and until we have a growth mindset or the experimental mindset, so really you can't do anything. You can't work with a fixed mindset today. You have to have a mindset which is creative, which is innovative, which is always thinking about what next. And then I have also covered some area which talks about dealing with the ambiguities. When you have an experimental mindset, when you run the organization, it is not that there will be a stability at all points in time. There will be clarity at all points in time, and will have answers to all the questions at all points in time. You may not have answers to all the questions at all points in time, even if you are working as a CEO of the organizations, you see. So how can we create the tolerance towards the ambiguities, and how can you participate in bringing about change in the organizations by making that ambiguous aspect into a clear aspect? So what kind of a thought process is needed from moving from ambiguous environment to a clarity led environment? So that's where I'll talk about briefly on the ambiguous, dealing with ambiguity and tolerance for ambiguity. Then briefly, I will touch on the areas of, freedom to fail, and, and also the risk taking. Now, freedom to fail and risk taking is the area which deals with learning to execute primarily. How can we learn to execute? Because ultimately everything revolves around the executions. If your execution is not smooth, you can't really, run your businesses successfully. And you have also seen that, the COVID-19, the challenge which it has thrown in the marketplace, it has created a lot of innovations in the markets. A lot of innovations. When I say, you have seen that companies have been able to introduce products like sanitizer within the span of 7 days. Now the sanitizer is a one big innovation that has happened, is arising out of the COVID. And then you have a hand gloves market, that has been created out of the COVID markets. And then you have masks, which is another COVID-led innovations. And then you have ventilators, as you see. And the digitization has been so fast that off and on both environments are accepted as a new normal for the businesses. So this is around this I have created a talk, and there are about 25-30 slides. I'll try to run through those slides within the time frame that has been given to me, that up to 6:45 I need to close this talk. So let's look at some of the slides which I have created for you guys. So there are some which you find from the they are available in the Google also, and some are mine. So it's a combination of research and the self creation. So let's look at the side of it. So this is where we move. The idea is that how is the environment? This when we develop employees into the entrepreneurial roles. So what we need to really train them on, you see. Now this is the program which I recently, about a week, 10 days back, I delivered a session with the very large business house in India. They were going through some challenges about the managing executions, So that's where I use some of this material for training their middle to senior level managers. Of course, that program was online. So the idea of doing this program is that it revolves around, one is the environment, what's going on in terms of internal, external, and integration, encouraging entrepreneurship, experimental mindsets, dealing with ambiguities, and freedom to fail and learning to execute, and risk taking. This is what we are going to discuss. And then primarily what we need to work on continuously when we say we are a lifelong learners. So primarily we need to educate ourselves continuously as what's going around in the marketplace. Let's say today, even if you are a double PhD, but if you do not know how to handle Zoom, or how to handle the, Microsoft, so it has no value. That education of double PhD has no value. So you are really, find no place in the markets, if you fumble in that area. So that's where we say the new area is education plus skills. Even if you are a highly educated, and if you do not possess today the computer skills that are needed to navigate smoothly, you will found wanting. So that's where I say that one has to continuously upgrade knowledge, upgrade skills, and of course make the flexible attitude depending on the people with whom you are dealing with, and of course have a very tolerant behavior towards the marketplace, because marketplace is, in my view, is a very ruthless. So we must have a tolerant behaviors to operate in this ruthless marketplace. Now these are some of the environments which I said. Currently we operate in a blended environment. So blended environment is a combination of work from home, work from office, offline, online, and physical and virtual, and both have to be integrated to draw the meanings for the organizations. And then what's going on in the marketplace, that's the area that's happening. So essentially all businesses currently are impacted by the COVID-19 events. No one has been spared. And some have, of course, made a lot of money, typically companies like Parle-G, Britannia, and of course the milk companies, where they have multiplied their returns. And then some businesses have been asked to reset themselves because of the ecosystem. So if the ecosystem is changing, so they have to reset, redesign themselves. They can't keep themselves in the same environment which they were in the pre-COVID era. So they have to really align what's needed in the markets, and whatever the learnings they are going through at this point in time, they have to invest back into the organizations and they make their organizations more resilient. And this is what's going on in the marketplace, how the companies are responding to it at this point in time. Quickly, I'll talk about it. Some are responding. Responding means taking the welfare, well-beings of the organization. Some are recovering. That's the restarting activities, reopening, rehiring, rebudgeting, resupplying. Everything is in a re-mode, because everybody's strategy has gone for a 6. Even if where the demand has gone up very high, so their strategy has also gone haywire. Where the demand has gone down, so their strategy has also been gone. They have to change their strategy. So the really 3 areas that have been resetting is, one, how you respond, and then you recover really, and then you renew. The renewal strategy, how you bring about strategy executions, and how you prepare themselves. Because history has shown that whenever there has been crisis, the recovery is very fast. And when the economic recovery is very fast, so really organization needs to be very, very, nimble footing. They need to be robust in terms of responding to the changes that will take place in the post-COVID-19 scenarios, whenever it happens, you see. Because I believe that the recovery will come, but that will come very fast. So the another area where we need to train people, really the employees in, becoming an entrepreneur is that you can't become entrepreneurs unless and until you understand what's going on in the environment, because we need to teach them that the environment is ever changing. It's not going to be a static environment. It's going to be a dynamic environment. So the slide that is in front of you, it talks about 3 rows, and these 3 rows primarily deal with, first row talks about the internal environment, and second row talks about the external environment, and third row talks about how you integrate the internal and external environments. If you are able to integrate well the internal and external environment, we will be able to survive in the marketplace. And that's where the challenge for the entrepreneur is, and that's the big learning for the entrepreneur is that how do you integrate the internal and external environment. So integration is the key, and this is where we talk about the execution. You see, because every company is in a growth mode. Every company wants to grow very fast. So if they want to grow very fast, so they can't grow very fast unless and until they have people who are with the entrepreneur mindset. Like everybody is thinking about the top line and the bottom line. Everybody is thinking about that the 3 areas which are important. We need to have right people in the organizations. We need to continuously generate revenues, and we need to bring down the cost continuously. So these are the 3 areas where the entrepreneur has to keep in mind, has to work on. And he can work on these areas only if he has an understanding of the environment, which is ever changing in my view. So that's why I brought this slide here, that this is where we say we give the background to the employees, that this is what's going on in the environment, and this is how the organization environment exists, which is, we also have a PESEL, but that is a distant environment. But we talk about more of the immediate environment, which is a combination of internal, external, and the integration of these environment. And that's, in my view, a very big challenge for the organizations. If you really look at, for example, that the number of companies that have gone to the NCLT in last couple of years, now you will find that all these companies have gone not for the bad management, but for the fact that they have grown beyond their toes, and they do not have the talent to execute that. Now, to execute that growth, because this is what I always say, that the growth is pain for the organizations, and for managing growth, you can't run that with the employees. You can only run the growth or execute the growth with a intrapreneurial mindset of the employees. Now, some people do ask me a question, what is the difference between the employees, intrapreneur, and the entrepreneurs? I have a slide that I will show you subsequently, but quickly give you some feel on what I feel is that, the employee is the one who consumes the values, he's a value consumer, he consumes value. And the entrepreneur is one who create value for the organization.
Rakesh, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Your volume is a little low. Please increase your volume.
Okay.
A lot of feedback is coming that volume is low, and your slide also, just enhance your slide. Put it in full screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just a second.
Put it in a slideshow mode so that we can't read your subsequent slides. Now we can read your subsequent slides.
Okay. I will do that. Is it okay now?
It's better.
It's better now?
A little more.
Okay.
No. Put it on the slideshow, actually.
I will do that.
Right.
I normally don't do that in the slideshow format, because some people wants to see what's there on the left hand side, so for the curiosity.
No. Basically, the next slide should not be visible.
Yeah,
okay.
that's disturbing also.
I have nothing to hide, sir. Everything is in front. Okay, so that makes the job easier for everyone. So I hope it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to spend time on this, because this is quite clear. This talks about the individual environment, external environment, and the integration of the internal and external environment. I hope now the voice is clear. Everyone is, am I audible now?
It's better than before.
Okay. So let's look at this, the encouraging entrepreneurship, that's, are you ready? So what are the areas that we look at in this? This is where we say that primarily, this deals with the area of what's your definition of the corporate entrepreneurship? How does one become a successful entrepreneur, and how can we find entrepreneurs within and outside the organizations? So whenever we start the entrepreneurship journey in the organizations, we really need to look at and answer some of these questions, you see. So whether these questions come from top or from the middle or from the bottom, you see, in the organization. But these are the questions from where you start the entire game of entrepreneurships. And what are the methods and tactics that the organizations deploy in creating entrepreneurs, and how can you your organization implement that? And then we do that primarily from the perspective of business growth. If company says that we want to stay in a stable environment, so in my view, the age of that organization is limited. So organizations have to remain in a growth mode in order to promote people from within, give the improvement room for the people, build more revenues for the organizations, create bottom lines for the organization. So that's a continuous process. Only then people get developed in the organization. So they always remain in the entrepreneur zone rather than getting into the employee zone. So this is where we look at three areas. What is entrepreneurship? It's innovation, growth, and the employee engagement. That's how you work around that. The job of an entrepreneur is that he is a creator, he is an innovator, and he always look forward, how can we take the organizations to the next level? And how do we engage, motivate, and empowers people so that they really go out of their way in terms of promoting themselves and also promoting the team with which they work, and also building a culture in the organization which will help them to increase the bottom line. That's ultimately every organization looks forward to. And then who's an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is a guy who works in the organizations. He is from within the organizations, who is a dreamer, who converts the idea into the commercial format. And, that's where the entire entrepreneurship game is, that how can you convert the idea into a commercial meanings? Everybody is full of ideas, but the question is that how do you take that idea to the market and ensure that that idea gets converted into the commercial meanings, and the companies start drawing the revenue out of that idea. And this is where we look at some of the 5 I's of entrepreneurs. He's an insider, he's an initiator, he's an instigator, he's an influencer, and he's an intuitive guy. So that's the little difference between the employee and the the entrepreneur, is that employee is always fact based. Employee is always works around the area of specialists, and employee always seeks guidance, and employee wants to work within the given area, and he generally says that this is not my job, this is my area. Now, entrepreneur is generally a guy who works without the job descriptions, and he is willing to take on responsibilities, and he is flexible, and he is a idea guys who always keeps looking at how to he takes initiatives, in other words, and then also instigate others to contribute into the initiatives that he has taken. So this is how you look at the 5I of the entrepreneur. So entrepreneur is always from inside. So that's how you differentiate between the entrepreneur and the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs exist outside the organization. He is more independent. He is responsible for his all doings, whereas the entrepreneurs, he takes on the risk, but he works within the norms that have been set by the promoters. So that's how you differentiate between the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs. Now, these are some of the dimensions, the areas where generally the entrepreneurs are used for creating new ventures, creating new businesses, creating new product and services, and being innovative. Product and service innovativeness, and also the process innovativeness. These are the areas where we use the services of the employees who get converted into the entrepreneurs. Now, there are many examples of this. You see the companies which started off as the single product companies, they are today multi-product companies. Are the companies which started as some products, they will no longer manufacture that products. Typically you have a Wipro, one example, which used to be a vegetable oil company, and today it is a IT company. Wipro is today known more by the IT companies than by any other this thing. Similarly, you have GE, which was a lighting company once upon a time, and today it operates in a different product range altogether. So you can imagine from where they started off and from where they gradually moved into. So gradual movement from one product to the another is an outcome of that the entrepreneurship working in the organization successfully. And you have in India also some organizations like typically the Usha, they started off with the fans and sewing machine companies, and today the kind of a range they have, So that's all game of the entrepreneurs within the organizations who take challenges and start the products, and products become successful. I still remember the example when I used to work for long back in Shriram, so they had created products like the Usha Shriram mixer grinders and also the this one heat convectors. Now they, at that point in time, I'm talking about 38, 35, 36 years back, at that point in time, they were products with the complete, kind of a skepticism in mind, whether they'll be successful or not. And today they are the kind of money spinners for these organizations. So this is what happens, and this is how you use entrepreneurs. This is how you use the young engineers and MBAs in the organizations, converting their thought process from an employee orientation to the entrepreneur orientations. And what is the process that generally follows in building entrepreneurs in the organization is that the entrepreneurs need to really understand external and internal environments and the improvements that take place. So that's where I talked about initially in my first slides that, entrepreneurs must understand what's going on inside and outside the organization, and how can we convert our, strengths into a meaningful form, looking at the external market space, and have a explicit agreed upon goals. Reward and responsibilities are clearly defined and outlined, and supplying energy and determination that comes from the people and the promoters of the organizations, making those guys more robust, more effective, so that they can take on the challenges that's going on. Primarily an entrepreneur is the one who embrace uncertainty. Okay, he enjoys being in the uncertain environment, because employee enjoys being in a stable environment. So that's the another difference which I observed over a period of time, that this is where you can clearly demarcate a guy who is a stability oriented and a guy who is a uncertainty, enjoys the uncertainty. And this is where we say that, that don't lose focus. It is the customer who in the end determines how many people are employed and what sort of service companies can afford.
Rakesh bhai, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Your voice is still very low.
Is it?
A lot of people are writing. So please increase the volume. It will be
okay.
Better.
Now I hope now it should be okay. Is that okay now? Better? Is that okay now?
While you are talking in flow, it is getting down. So that is the problem.
Sir, can you try bringing in your mouthpiece near your mouth, sir?
Okay. Let me do that.
Normally. And the easier option is the listener also can control his volume. He can increase his volume on the laptop or a mobile.
Sometimes we look at other side only.
Yeah, the receiver also can do some arrangement.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I think it's good, good volume.
So for you it is okay? It's working well in Turkey?
Yes.
Wow. Thank you very much. So
yeah, it's working well. We have to increase volume at our end.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at next one. This is where we talk about the difference between managers, entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs. I'm not going to spend time on this, but I'm going to spend on 2-3 points which I'll talk about, which are crucial. That these are the two differentiators in my view. One is the risk. The managers are careful. Entrepreneurs are moderate risk takers, and the intrapreneurs are also moderate risk takers. Status, they are concerned about status. Employees are status conscious. He looks for a designation always. Entrepreneurs are not concerned about the status symbol. He is only concerned about how is he doing. And similarly, intrapreneurs also, they are not concerned about traditional status symbols, but they have a desire to independence. They want to do something, different. So this is how we look at, some of the differentiations between the managers, entrepreneurs, and the intrapreneurs. And this is where we look at the second aspect of it. And the one is encouraging, the entrepreneurship. You can't encourage entrepreneurship unless and until you have a, experimental mindset in the people. When we say experimental mindset, what it primarily means that the mindset which is more learning oriented. Okay, willing to have a learning agility in terms of, flexibility, speed, inquiring mind, risk-taking, growth-oriented, reflective, research-based, collaborative, and interdependent. This is what the quality, this is what the skill that the entrepreneur brings on the table, that they are interdependent. They never think that they can do everything by themselves. Okay, but only advantage they have is that they are more curious, they are more little more moderate risk takers, and they go out of the way in terms of understanding what they are doing is absolutely fine in my view. Okay, and then the another area, that's the fixed mindset and the growth mindsets. The guys who are more on the entrepreneur sides, they work with the growth mindsets and they don't work with the fixed mindsets. So they always say that I can learn anything I want to. When I'm frustrated, I persevere. I want to challenge myself. When I fail, I learn. So this is how the experimental mindset works, and then they experiment with everything, that's, the more you experiment, the more learning comes. That's a new research which I found, you see, that the guys who have experimental mindsets, they are more, healthy, and they are also constantly experiencing a new learning by way of doing newer and newer experiments into the activities which they perform, and they are more related with the outcomes. They are more outcome oriented, not so much of a activity related, that I have done these activities. If they have done activities, they always see what are the outcomes they are likely to get, and that's the another area that they look at is experiment. That is, every experiment will teach you something new and prepare you better for the next challenge. So this is where we say the experimental mindset. And experimentation is learning through play. It is a center of living a productive and fulfilling life. So this is where the experimental area works. So I'll skip this. This is more of a rhetoric kind of a thing, So one thing is for sure, you cannot choose not to change when the world around you changes yourself. Response to change is mandatory, and this is what is happening in the today's environment. Like wearing a mask is not a choice. This is a mandatory, and if you don't wear, you get challaned also, you see. So this is where something we call the mandatory, and this is where we say that how change happens in the people. And COVID is one great learning that tells you that change happens when it is forced. Some people say forced by the circumstances. It could be in a democratic format, or it could be in a little more autocratic format, but somewhere you draw the combination of these two in order to bring about a change in the organization. And that's, in my view, is the big learning that I've got from this. And COVID has really changed the way we do everything. The way we talk, the way we maintain distance, the way we wash vegetables, the way we wash everything that brings into the house get washed, the way we bring the shoes into the house, and how hygienically clean and neat we have become. Hygiene standards have gone up. So these are some of the great learnings, in my view, that have come from the COVID. But that's a function of the change in the mindset of people, in my view, which is a combination of both democratic and autocratic functioning, you see. And that's the third area that we talked about, is the ambiguity. That today COVID is in a situation which is an ambiguous situation. So there's no clarity. It's open to interpretation by everyone. Everyone says that how much time will it take to get over. Somebody says 3 months down the line. Somebody says September. Somebody says December. Somebody says it can, we will have to live with this. So this is what is the ambiguous environment, because some people say that it is a theory only, the ambiguous environment. It is not a theory, it is a practical. And today, who are working in the organizations, they know that what will happen, what's going on in the marketplace, you see, and then how to change really the employees' thought process to really look at the contributions they are making to the organizations, and how they are bringing the change in the organizations, and how they are earning salaries at the end of the day, you see. So everything is getting challenged in the marketplace. And of course, there are some scary news globally when we look at. It's a combination of both. You have some companies where the job opportunities have also come up from, in large scales, and you have companies where the many people have been declared as surplus. So it's a combination of both, which is happening in the marketplace, and that's where we say it is an ambiguous environment, and we must teach people that what ambiguity is and how we must tolerate this ambiguity is, the ambiguity, what it throws is that it does not throw the definitive answers. Generally what we do in the organization is that when we go to the managers, we expect him to have yes and no answers, so whether I do or not do, because manager himself is not very clear as what will happen. So this is where we say that people must accept that it will not happen that even the CEO in the organizations will always have the answers to the questions which are posing in the current environment. So therefore, we must learn to tolerate the ambiguous, and we must contribute, and we should not be blindfolded to the answers that we get from the seniors in the organizations. Okay, this is what the biggest learning which I find today is that, so nobody has the right answers. If somebody says that I have the right answers, it is only with regard to the commands, how to run computers and how to run mobile devices, which how you can go to the Google and get the tutorials and solve your problems. But with regard to the business and market environments and the exports and imports, so there are no ready-made answers that you have. So therefore, you have to live with the limited information, and that's where the challenge comes. And you have to take a decision based on the 60% of the information or 50% of the information, and that's where you graduate from being a plain employee to the entrepreneurs. So this is the new thought process, in my view, which is happening in the marketplace. Now, this is where we say that, freedom to fail. If you are prepared to be wrong, never come up with anything original. You can't come up with anything original. That means that you have to be prepared that I could be wrong. Then only I can learn. If I'm not prepared to be wrong, I can't learn. I can't be original in my work. So that's the rhetoric, and that's the quote which I find very interesting. So being wrong is not a problem. Somewhere some people think that I'm wrong, so therefore I belittle myself, or I think that probably I cannot grow. It never happens that only if you are going wrong, then only you learn. In my view, you see, probably you learn more when you are wrong. You see, that's my learning of last 3-4 months is, you see. And then the freedom to fail, okay, and creativity comes from only freedom to fail. Okay, and freedom to fail comes from by way of experimentation. And that's how the individuality works in the organization. So freedom to fail is a new normal. I believe that the organization have started to learn this aspect, that the people who have failed, as long as they failed while trying something new, that's acceptable. And some companies also look at those guys a little more differently, in my view, because they say that the guy who has failed many times, he has the maximum number of experience, and he is a good advisor for the youngsters in the organization, so that they don't repeat the same mistakes which these guys have committed. And that's where the value of experience comes in, and value of experimentation comes in, and value of freedom to fail comes in the organization settings. Normally we think that, this is what the very interesting area and very interesting slide, which I always enjoy looking at. That's the success. This is what people think it looks like, that you are moving straight, but it never happened that way. What it really looks like is a zigzag journey. Once you are ready that it is a zigzag journey, it is not a slanting line that you are moving only in the one directions. So you will be successful provided you have a mindset which is more of a experimental in nature. Now, essential question that we find and we need to ask really is, how can we create a team of innovators and risk takers who embrace failures in the organizations? I do not have answers for this, but this is where I instigate people to really look at that when you're creating teams, they must look at that they are who are capable of embracing failure if it happens down the line. Biggest failure, biggest fear today around in the industry is fear of failure. Every manager is a fear of failure. If you go out in the market today, what is the biggest fear people have? The biggest fear people have today is not to get infected with the COVID, you see, coronavirus. So similarly in the organization, there is always a fear of failure. And that's what the challenge for the promoters and the organization and the senior team is, that how can they make their junior guys fearless and instill an attitude of I can do it, rather than I can't do it. And how to have an element of fear. Fear is only to the extent that when you're trying something new, it is human. It's a human nature that there is an element of fear. But how do you support them so that they become fearless and then contribute and bring about change in the organization? So So this is the another area which is feedback and learning, So this where you say, if you have a freedom to fail, experimental mindsets, and you have you know how to deal with ambiguity. So then you learn through the process of the feedback. So how do you take a feedback from the people, and how do you that there could be a negative feedback, but I find that even if you get a negative feedback, you should think that he is the best guy who has given you a negative feedback, because if you are working, you will not feel you won't mind that even if somebody says that you have not done a good job, but because you have done your best, and it is not that always you will be doing your best. Even the Sachin Tendulkar, who has scored maximum centuries, also have gone get out at zero, so got out zero at many times. So it happens, if you're a great player, you will also got out zeros many times. But the fact is that how do you handle that pressure? You may be a successful hero, but it is not that every movie of yours will be successful. So there will be failure down the line, which provides you a new learning, and that's happens when you continuously keep getting the feedback and the learning. And that's the role that entrepreneur has to play in the organization when he start off new venture internally, or start off new products, or work with the new process in the organizations. So it will not happen whatever they're doing in the first go, they will be successful, but they have to constantly keep looking at the feedback, and whatever feedback they get, they put that learning into their format. So this is the another area that we talk about. And then the part of a risk taking, you see. So that's where you say learning to execute, and learning to execute doesn't come without the risk. So how do you handle the risk? That whether you are people in the work in the organizations are risk averse or they are risk takers, and how do they take the risk? They take a calculated risk or they take a blind risk. Okay, what is that smart risk taking? These are some of the points which we talk about, that there has to be a risk taking that should be encouraged. It is better to be a risky, which I always say, it is better to be a risky than to be a stable. And like, it should not happen that you are too convenient, that you can't handle the inconvenience. So this is what happens many times. You find that you have been living in a very convenient scenario, and today the inconvenience have come, and due to the COVID, and you have not been able to handle. So this is where we say smart risk taking, and you always remain in a stress zone. Stress in the sense that where you keep stretching yourself, a functional stress, which I always say, you need not get into the dysfunctional stress, but you need to put yourself in a functional stress, so that you keep stretching and keep looking out that how can you contribute more and become a better manager in the marketplace, and which contributes to the bottom line. So what affects your decision? So this is the smart decision making, smart risk taking environment is. This is what we try and inculcate in the people, especially in the employees, that if you have to become entrepreneurs, you have to have a right attitude. You look at the expectations, you look at the limitations, you look at the circumstances, you look at the experiences. Okay, you look at the imaginations, knowledge, external factors, and then you take a very calculated risk. It is not that you simply go out and blindly take a risk. And that's where they say that whenever you take any product outside your organization, it must be experimented well. And that's where the role of experimentation comes in. That anything which you launch or you take outside, it should be experimented. If the number of experiments you carry out, the number of new learnings that you go through, and that's where you find the changes also in the marketplace with regard to the handset markets. Also see that they keep experimenting by introducing newer and newer handsets in the markets, and through the experimentations only, they keep giving you newer and newer versions every second month, you see. So this is where we talk about the smart risk taking area. And lastly, risk taking is risk ahead. So that's where we say that when you take risks, you look at your hindsights, insights, and the foresights, and that's where you combine all three, and then you move around and take a calculated risk. And lastly, that's the stakeholders. So entrepreneur is one who understands that who are the great stakeholders in the organizations, and here he really serviced them well, those stakeholders. Even he knows that who are the great stakeholders. When I say great stakeholders, so for example, he knows that it is the customers who gives you revenue. Okay, that's another important stakeholder. Revenue comes from the customers. And he also knows that employee is an equally important stakeholder, because what employee gives you is the innovation and the productivity. So the innovation and productivity comes from the employee, is a very important stakeholders. Revenue customer comes from the external environment outside, which is a customer, another important stakeholders. And then your constant partners, the bankers or the other guys, the PE guys, like, the partners who provide you funding from time to time, to run your business, to keep giving you the oxygens from time to time. So the challenge for the entrepreneur is that he has to understand the entire cycle of the business, and this is how you train them to move from the employees to the entrepreneurs, become independent, and also prove to the promoters that they are equally competent to handle the business, you see. And then therefore they remove some of the inefficiencies or the decisions of reducing the manpowers, etc., by continuously exploring newer and newer territories, for newer and newer terrains for the businesses, so that the business remains in a live mode, So you have seen many traditional businesses, they have grown, they have expanded systematically, and they have been able to survive also. But there are at the same time businesses from a very respected families have not been able to perform well. It is not that they are inefficient, but in my view, they are the ones who really could not leverage the entrepreneurship or the talent of the people in the organizations by involving them into the mainstream of the business. Now, this is where I will take a pause. So I have completed my talk. So it is 6:49. So 6:44, 4 minutes up. So I'll hand it over back to the Pritima for taking on the question answer. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rakesh, for a wonderful talk. So the key, three learnings for me to become an intrapreneur are threefold. One is having an experimental mindset, risk-taking ability, and the third is absence of fear of failure, not fearing, that you'll fail. Okay, so we have a few comments in the chat box, and we have one question, and the question is by Mr. Ashok Kumar Arya, and the question is, the current volatility in the business and employment environment has put a further premium on government or public sector jobs. What will be the impact of entrepreneurship of employees?
You see, the Indian environment, when we talk about it, is more from the corporate perspectives, promoters driven, because the public sector organizations more governed by the rules and regulations and the set guidelines which are set by the parliaments. However, if the public sector organizations also have to grow and survive, they will also have to get into the mode of entrepreneurship, because the jobs are unlikely to be there, in my view. Also, you have a BSNL which had to remove, almost 80 to 90,000 people, and all those 80 to 90,000 people were the qualified guys of the engineers. They were not that 10th pass or 12th pass. They were all, majority of them were engineers who were working in the public sector organization. Yeah. And this is where I say that the guys who are engineers, MBAs, and all of a sudden they get a notice that you are no longer required in the organization. I feel very shameful, that why I have acquired a knowledge, or why I have acquired qualifications to hear one day that I'm a redundant guy. Even if I am doing even if I am a topper of my institute or a topper of my B school, but I find that because of the inefficiency of the public sectors, I have been declared redundant. So this talk has been designed from that perspective, that the employee has to get out of the stable mindset and the salary-oriented, thought process, that on the 30th of every month, that there is a salary that gets transferred to my bank account, and there is a bell, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction. Chalo salary to I, so this COVID has put a pressure on them to get out of this thought process, because if the public sector won't survive, where these guys will survive? If the railway is going to be privatized and going into the hands of those 10, 12 guys, you see, who will have the, people working in the railways to do only a, clerical work of pushing papers, In my view, because of the online environment, the pushing papers jobs will get out of the, whether it is a corporate, public sector, or the government departments, Like you don't need a guy who's sitting on the Aadhaar seat and making your Aadhaar. You can go online and put your own address and put a proof of address and then get it. So this is where I say that you have to have a revolutionary thinking going forward. If I do not have a revolutionary thinking, I won't survive. Probably I won't get retired at the age of 60. I will get, probably earlier retired at the age of 35. So then I have nothing to go. I will keep looking at how much money I will get from the public sector as a corpus, and then invest that in the LIC, which will also give me a 2% interest by the time of 2030, 40, if we continue to look at the way the interest rates are moving. So these things are putting more pressure on the people to think really like a business, that if I'm educated, I should be able to earn myself, or help the organization to grow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I would request the participants, like if you have any question, you can ask now. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. So we just have about 5 minutes. Okay. So if anybody wants to make a comment.
Any value addition will be appreciated.
Yeah. So some of the comments, in the meanwhile, I'm going to read from here. Radhika says that continuous improvement leads to innovation. Not getting satisfied in the current with current achievement so what approach do a better job. So Sonali says that celebrate failure as you celebrate success. Negative feedback is your area of improvement. And okay, and again Radhika says that failure should be documented the same way as success is documented. It would help others to learn from others' failures. So this is another comment. So Harshvardhan Biswas has a question. He's saying, what are the most important qualities which should an employee have to become a good entrepreneur or to start a business?
Yeah, you should be flexible. You should be willing to accept failures down the line, and you should be, outgoing guy, you see, and he should not feel bad if somebody criticizes him, you see, and he should be a little bit of a shameless, Yeah, shameless. When I say that, some people feel ashamed, oh, that guy has told me you are a useless guy. But if somebody has told you you are a useless guy, you should say thank you. Okay, give me the tips. How can I become a useful? You see. So, these kind of a confidence, when you develop, you think that you can become an entrepreneur, you see, like selling in the marketplace, like you can be an entrepreneur if you can stand out on the road and behind the standee and sell insurance. Now that's the yardstick, like somebody says that, can I be an entrepreneur? You can be an entrepreneur if you go out and sell some products and realize money from that person. That means you have an entrepreneur qualities. Because we do that for the organization, but we are not willing to do that for ourselves, because they are somewhere down the line, or in our heart we think that I'm an engineer MBA, how can I do the selling? I should only be putting signatures on the piece of papers. I think that time has gone of putting signatures, because you are today in a digital signature format, you see. So it is the digital signature which will work and which will not work. Probably your signatures will have zero value in in terms of, that with the pen, of course. But digital signatures will have the values.
Okay.
So you see, it's a traditional mindset is completely out. Let me tell you, you will have to work with a revolutionary mindset, and equality is going to come very fast. When I say equality, when you are on a WhatsApp group, you do not know at what age of a guy with whom you are interacting on the other side and what is his background. So this is where I say that, he also answers you with the same kind of a confidence. So this is where we will have to move to a more of a equality mindset rather than senior, junior, rich, poor. I think this is what the future is turning out to be. That's a big change in my view in the society thought process. Yeah, thank you.
Question? Any other question? Any comment you want to make?
Yeah, Rakesh sir, thank you for the session. My question is, sir, that how does the organization ensure that we have a particular learning interventions in place to build that capability of entrepreneurs in the organization? So, what kind of training programs or learning and development framework which is required to ensure that?
You see, this is the one area where training program is only from the perspective of creating an awareness, and the learning of an entrepreneur comes only through the practical aspects. What Absolutely. It means that you have to take them to the market, give them a product, Okay, let them develop their products, take it to the market, and realize the value. Now, then only you learn it. I mean, people don't learn it in a training format, you know. It is, or you learn it from a which we call a action research model. Action
Absolutely.
research model is that where you carry out some of the learnings, and then you go to the shop floor, apply the learnings, and see the fruits developing. Come back to the classroom, experiment that, do the analysis why you have been successful or why you have been failed. It is more hands-on projects that we use in terms of developing entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are not developed through the theory. This is what I've seen many entrepreneurs in my life, so therefore I can say that with the confidence. I've seen guys from the plain graduates becoming a CEO of an organization because he was a great entrepreneur. Okay, I've seen an plain engineer from best of the colleges becoming an entrepreneur because he was willing to go out, work in the shop floor, learn from there, create products, take it to the markets, and realize the commercial value of the organizations. And all these guys I'm talking about became managing directors at the age of 27, 28, Now, if you are at 22, 23, and you are bringing about the products for the organizations, and you give them 6, 7 products successfully, so you create a company for them, and then you become a managing director for the organization. And this is how the concept of a young managing directors came into being. It is not that the young managing directors became because of the qualifications. So they acquired these positions by virtue of showing that they can convert the idea into a commercial meanings and help the organization to draw more revenue and the bottom line. So this is how the entrepreneurs get developed in the organizations.
Right, so you rightly mentioned action-oriented learning and development is going to be the key forward. Yeah. In fact, one of the companies, they have a program called as D4, which is about defining a problem, then discovering a problem, and then coming up developing the framework for the same, and then demonstrate the final outcome. Yeah. So you rightly mentioned that action learning is going to be the key.
Yeah, that's the.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Okay, last question. Huh?
Okay. Rakesh, unfortunately, we are in a country where nobody likes government, but everybody wants a government job. Yeah. That is one statement. And second is, even in West multinational, I have seen there are very few organizations who are live to the situation of creating right kind of work culture. Yeah. It's a culture of psychopathy, culture of, scratching each other's back. Very rarely in organizations, the individual merit and talent is recognized and rewarded. So this concept of entrepreneurship are nice. Those who are smart, they get out of the organization, they start their own business, they are able to establish. Absolutely. But within organization, I've seen very few organizations recognizing the talent of an individual and helping him to become an entrepreneur within the organization. How would you like to comment?
See, when we look at this side, that your question is divided into two parts. One is the government jobs. Let's look at the government job. Of course, government job is the most preferred jobs because today the salaries in the government jobs are very high. So people prefer a stable career. And as I said, there are two kinds of people, one who are stability oriented and the other who enjoys being in an uncertain environment. And then there are some who really can't afford uncertainty at all. So let's give a benefit of doubt of those, and that the guy who look for stability orientation and they go for government jobs. We also need excellent bureaucrats. So therefore, let the best of the guys get into the bureaucracy, so they occupy senior positions and run the country well, you see. Now that's the government side of it. Now the private side of it, you see, the organizations which will not encourage entrepreneurship, in my view, they will not survive. They may survive for 20 years, 30 years, but they can't survive for 100 years, or 80 years or 70 years. Now you have typical examples like Tata Steel, which is a 120 years old company today, 113 years old company today. You have Tata Motors, which is another 80 years old company. And these are the big names that you have heard. And there is another lesser known names like the Eternit Everest, the Everest company, which is also by the way, is a 80 years old company. It was set up somewhere in 1934. It's an older company than the ACC. And the plant which they set up in 1934, that plant is still producing, material for them. So, what happens is that if you constantly keep improving, keep changing, and keep, these changes are not brought in by the board guys, people who are sitting in the boardrooms, are people who are the promoters. Now these changes are brought in by the people who are working in the shop floors, and these guys are really the entrepreneurs. These are the guys who are really thinking differently, and then taking on. So my view is that the organizations which will embrace entrepreneurship, okay, they will survive or they will grow faster. Companies which will not embrace, they will only stay in a stability job scenario. They won't able to grow. Like you have today's scenario, sanitizers. Now, if you have, I have seen one organization, I don't want to name it, they were nowhere near to this product at all, but they created a team of 10 guys who in an in-house format created 5 machines, and they had the raw material. Then when they realized that this sanitizer can be made by this product is a raw material for that, and they converted that and selling a sanitizer in the marketplace and adding revenue to the bottom line, top lines. So it's totally how fast you get into that scenario. It is not that there are not many organizations. There are many organizations today who are nimble footing and then bringing about a change. You have a Dabur. They have introduced sanitizers in 5 days. So you look at Dabur. It used to be a churran company in 90s. You see. I still remember, never used to cross Saibabad, because I used to get the fragrance of the churran, you see. But today you have a Dabur, which is a FMCG company. It's a big company now. This change has been brought in by these people who have worked in Dabur for so long. And one of the companies is able to take the sanitizer to the marketplace within a span of 5 days. You see. So the point which I'm trying to make is that the organizations who will realize will grow faster than the others. The organizations will not realize, they will stay in the same zones.
Can I add something to it, Mr. Rakeshji?
Yeah, sure.
I think it is the opportunity, if you can, because opportunity knocks once on your doorstep. And if you cannot take the advantage of that opportunity, it wouldn't be easy, as you said about the sanitizer. And also you find that it's the government of India who gave the initiative of be local, something vocal for local, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that also gave an initiative for the local entrepreneurs to come up and start the businesses.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for.
Okay, so thank you everyone. I think we are really running short of time. So now I would request Deepak Bahara to formally give a vote of thanks. Our friend Deepak. Yeah, Deepak is there.
Good to hear, Deepak.
Very good evening to all.
Good evening.
It's a wonderful and pleasure moment for me to give a vote of thanks, especially when Rakesh is around. My first thanks goes to Mukesh Jain and his team, GP Rao, YN Koshal, Pratima Koshal, for taking this wonderful initiative of engaging young minds, young diploma holders, for a weekly talk every Friday. I think going forward, we are all going to be having a major advantage of listening to the young minds as well, and also engaging the members, and that's really great. What to talk about Rakesh? Rakesh, really wonderful discussion. Listening to you is always a delight, because when we listen to you, you don't only talk about HR, you talk about the holistic business approach. Being in a business coach, you have that advantage, which we don't. We always normally talk about HR, but you talk about the business. A few takeaways. I'll not take much, maybe 1 minute or so, if I can be permitted. First and foremost thing is, an entrepreneur has to be innovative and creative. Entrepreneur has to be a surfer mindset. A surfer can't do the planning, organizing, sitting on the boardroom and then go to the sea and surf, because he has to see the tides, whether it's coming low tides, high tides. He has to decide there and then. His life and his every stake is there only. And he has to have a surfer mindset when he gets into this kind of current crisis. He has to be very, very vocal. He has to learn from mistakes. He has to learn through experiences. He has to allow himself to fail as much as he can, because that's a learning opportunity. He has to adapt to the re-mode, which is respond, recover, and renew as and when time requires. In a way, I'll say a seamless switch from the virtual world to physical world to virtual and then to getting into digital. His focus has always shown to be the cost efficiencies. If it's not cost efficient, he's not going to sustain and survive for a long. Apart from that, one thing is more important, that he has to be a risk taker and he has to service the stakeholders. These are the key takeaways for today's session from me. And I would also like to talk and give thanks to my veteran members, Rajiv Khurana, R.D. Sharma, Dr. V.P. Singh, Dr. S.P. Singh, who came and devoted their valuable time to us, and also all the other members who are present here for their valuable times. And I think these sessions will going to enhance our own knowledge and given a varied experiences to face the reality of the tough world ahead of us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pratma ji, for a wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
It's always a moment for all of us.
Yeah. So very soon we will announce our next topic and next speaker. Okay. Like many requests have come, so I will be soon sharing it with you. Okay. Yeah. And all right, thank you very much, all of you, for coming.
Thank you,
Goodbye and good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Rakesh. Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mukesh sir. Thank you.
All my seniors.
Thank you, Rao.
I'm
Thank you,
leaving
sir.
the meeting.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ashok
Thank
bhai.
you, Pratima ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sucharita.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
I'm sure next
Thank you,
time
sir.
we'll have more participation.
Surely, sir.
Yes, sir.
Surely.
Sure, sir.